And hello and welcome to this edition of Phillies Talk. It's Phillies Talk Podcast, the longest running independent show talking about the Philadelphia Phillies. And I'm joined with Matt Veazey. How you doing, Matt?
Great, Rich. How about yourself?
Not bad. Hey, we last chatted quite some time ago. I know it's my fault, and I apologize to the listeners out there. I believe it was well before Christmas. We were trying to see if we could sneak a program in before the holidays, and I remember you saying, well, just in case we don't, I wanted to wish everybody a happy holiday. Thank God you did that, because I feel like Rip Van Winkle here. I just woke up and it's spring training.
Yeah, and the gifts were a little bit late this year, but Santa finally came to the Phillies with bringing back Real Muto and Didi. So and the additions that we got with the bullpen, changes in the front office that were necessary. So it was a very, from my perspective, a very productive off season. And those gifts from Santa may have been a little late, but I'll take them. Better late than never.
Yeah, that's for sure. I really didn't think it was going to happen. I was settled with the fact of almost doing without JT Realmuto for the season 2021 and beyond, and they got it done. I guess, due to the COVID situation and, some teams playing their hands close to the vest, so to speak, not wanting to invest mega money on some players, kind of helped the Phillies.
I'm not sure it was so much that, Rich. I kind of the opposite of you. I was never really concerned about Real Muto. I believed he was always coming back, and it was just going to be a matter of them working out the particulars. And there was never any rush for that to happen, other than him being concerned about getting hurt in some freak off-season accident that would permanently disable him. But I was never really worried about it, and I think that he wanted to be here. The Phillies certainly wanted him to stay, and they finally got around to getting to their price and making a deal. So, and the real surprise for me was Gregorius, who I think is more like what you were alluding to. I think the market just didn't develop for Didi the way he had hoped it would, and a lot of that I think was pandemic driven, and so I think it's certainly fantastic for them to have him back. In particular, while he may not be the best defensive shortstop around, he's adequate. He's average defensively, and he's a top-flight offensive force in the lineup, and something they needed, another strong left-handed bat in addition to Harper in that lineup. So surprise to me a little bit that we got Gregorius back, but a pleasant surprise.
Yeah, the boys are back, so to speak, back on the field. Down there in Clearwater, we talked a little bit about, the struggle for us still in the Northeast. We're not down there in 75-degree weather with short sleeves and shorts on. We're up here, dealing with snow, ice, cold weather.
Yeah, we've had it. I think we've had, I don't know where your neighborhood is, but here in the far northeast section of Philadelphia, we've had snow, ice on the ground, like covering the lawns, sidewalks, for the better part of, seems like 3 weeks now. You can't get rid of it because it's been so cold since the first one. And maybe 5-6 days ago, it seemed like we were starting to thin it out a little, and then we got hit with another one. So apparently looking ahead at the forecast, we're supposed to warm up pretty well here next week, the week of the 22nd, so February. So, and I don't think that, temperatures generally moderate after that. I mean, this is going to be the last week in February. Hard to believe that, but we're going to be a week from today we're doing this on the 21st. A week from today is the final day of February, the first game for the Phillies of the Grapefruit League season, and then we'll be into March. So I think that the weather's going to moderate for us this week, and I think we'll start to get rid of this snow and ice finally, and it'll start to feel more like spring and spring training, say a week from now. Our ground's a lot clearer, and the Phillies are actually playing a ball game.
Yeah, we'll get that spring warmth, so to speak, emanating throughout us, and Yeah, it's always a tough struggle when we hear, spring training started, when you're up here. But like you said, yeah, when we see them on the field playing, and it won't be but about a week from now or so, and that'll be happening. And some fans will be back in the stadium. I was reading on the Phillies website that they're going to have up to 2,200 fans allowed into each game this year so far. So that's the plan for now. So at least if you do have spring training plans for 21, it seems like you're going to possibly get into the ballpark.
That's good news for those fans. I know I'm not going down this year, but I'm already making my plans for 2022. I think we'll be well past this pandemic by then. Everybody be vaccinated, and we'll be really back to normal. I think you'll see a semblance of normalcy as we progress through 21. But 2022, I think, will be pretty much fully back to what we consider relative normalcy. And I'm looking forward to heading down there myself next year. This year, fans get their first chance down there in Clearwater, and I'm not really sure what the name of the ballpark is right now, Rich. I have to look that up, but I heard that they were moving on from Spectrum Field. It was Bright House Field when it first opened, then it went to Spectrum Field, and now I'm hearing there might be a new name. But first game is Monday, March 1st against the Orioles, 1:05. So it's not that far away.
Yeah, the ever-changing world of cable television, I guess, down there in Florida, necessitating these changes. I kind of liked it when it was Bright House Field. I like that name. Yeah, Bright House. But for now, as you said...
It's confusing me, Spectrum Field. I'm like, Spectrum? Spectrum's back.
We're thinking the old days with the Spectrum right across the street from the vet, as it were. That does feel like a long time ago. Just a quick story about that. I'll never forget, I was at I think it was a Peter Gabriel show that lasted till around midnight one night at the Spectrum. When that show let out, the Phillies were in extra innings. I went across the street and we got in for free, mind you, something you probably wouldn't do today, and watched a couple innings of baseball till the wee hours of the morning. So that's always a memory that'll stay in my mind.
Yeah, there's I have a lot of those stories from down there at Veterans Stadium. So there's security's a little bit tighter these days, but I'm not sure what would happen these days with one of those games. I don't know if we'd even get a game anymore that would, the famous game with the San Diego Padres where they played the doubleheader, and we had the walk-off by Mitchie Poo during that magical 1993 season that happened at 4-something in the morning. I remember I was working an overnight shift listening on the radio to that whole thing. We worked almost the entire night. We were able to listen to the Phillies on the radio while we were working, so which was unusual. But they didn't start that second game of that doubleheader, I don't believe, until well after midnight, maybe 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, I don't think you'd even see that happen today. So they would just call it off. But I don't even know why they did it back then. But I guess because San Diego was, maybe making their last visit in for the year or something, and they, getting them back in for a game would have been difficult. But it seems a little bit ridiculous to start a game at 1 in the morning. But it certainly resulted in the crazy Phillies all-time memory. And I'm just curious what would happen these days if we had a ball game that went so late. And would they make fans pay to come in at 1 in the morning, if the game was still going on, 2 in the morning? That'd be interesting to see.
Yeah, I'm sure this day and age it wouldn't fly very well, and I'm sure they wouldn't let fans in for free.
Yeah,
that's
right.
For sure. It's just it's not conducive to that sort of environment.
And it's probably going to get tougher and tougher to even see something like that, because they're back to, I see this year, they're back to the rule of starting extra innings with a runner on second base. And if that continues as a fixture in the game going forward, it's going to change the nature of those long extra inning games. You're starting with a runner in scoring position every extra inning. One of these times you figure somebody's going to come through. So I don't think you're going to see the days of the 15, 18, 20 inning game may be over.
Yeah. One of those things that you hear about and your grandfather will tell, the grandchildren about. Oh, I remember they used to play till 2 or 3 in the morning.
Well, that's us, Rich.
Yeah, exactly.
We're the grandfather.
That's what I mean. We'll be imparting those stories. But Bryce Harper back for another season. As you said, Realmuto back in the fold. Didi and the rest of the gang. What are we expecting this year, legitimately, from this Phillies team? Have you given it a thought much?
Yeah, I have, Rich. I haven't. I'll be writing up a piece with my formal predictions, which I do every year, probably around mid-March, maybe around the third week in March. So I like to give it an opportunity. You'll start to see people putting out predictions now, which I think is ridiculous. There are a number of good free agents still available. You could have a play, you could predict somebody's going to come in first place, and then during spring training they lose 2 of their star players for the year to injury. So where does your prediction go there? I think at a certain point you do have to do your deed or get off the pot. So I like to wait until we get well into spring training, get about 3 weeks of games under our belts, get within a week or so of the season, and then we start to see get an idea of players who are emerging, formal roles on different teams. Were there any key injuries that are going to affect the club over the course of a full season? And then I'll make a prediction. But as it stands right now, and I know I'm in the minority of this from some of the initial predictions I've seen, but I think the Phillies are a playoff team. This was a playoff team a year ago, except for that one area of the ball club, the bullpen. The Phillies had one of the top offensive attacks in all of baseball last year. I believe that they were a top 5 team in runs scored in all of MLB. And they bought that offensive attack back, with bringing Realmuto and Didi. And I think that it's only going to get better because we saw what Alec Boehm could do over just, maybe a month's worth of play last year. He's going to have that initial introduction to Major League Baseball under his belt, so we'll get to see him in his first full season in that lineup. Rhys Hoskins should be back fully healthy this year. So I'm really excited. I would like to see McCutchen get himself a full, healthy season. We saw him lose 2019 to his injury when he was playing really well after just maybe 6-7 weeks of the year. And then last year, because of the COVID, we didn't really get a whole year with him. But I would really love to see Andrew, even though he's getting older, but he could still be a productive player. And I think that he's going to be another one who can step up his game a little bit, even at the age he's at now. Not to that MVP level again, but to a level that I don't think we've seen yet here in Philadelphia. We certainly haven't seen him over a full season. So to me, they're already a top 5 offensive ball club going in. And I think that they have room for growth in this lineup. I even think Harper can be better. The starting pitching rotation, I think, has a chance to be better. Nola and Wheeler are legitimate co-aces at the top of that rotation. Zach Eflin has a lot of room for growth. He seems very confident. I think that he's coming into starting into his prime years, and I think we're going to see a lot out of him. Spencer Howard, still very highly thought of by most baseball people, and struggled last year in his introduction to Major League Baseball, but his best is still yet to come. I like a couple of the additions that they made with bringing in Chase Anderson, especially. I think that he's going to really help out the ball club. And then you have, as far as their depth chart goes, they've helped out their depth chart in the rotation by signing Matt Moore as a left-hander. So they finally have a lefty option there. Moore pitched really well in Japan last year, I believe it was. So I think that you're going to need it too. You're going to need that depth in your rotation. Teams are not going to be able to get by, if you will, with 4 and 5 starters anymore. This is a day and age where the Phillies aren't going to go with a pure 6-man rotation, but over the course of the season, you're going to need 7 or 8 starting pitchers to step in. As long as everybody stays healthy, they have Nola, Wheeler, Eflin, Moore, and Anderson. Vince Velasquez is still back, and Howard. So they have 7 right there. You're going to look at. I think that they're still going to look at maybe trying to add another cheap option as we move along here. What I'm really excited about is the changes that they've made to the bullpen, Rich. That's where I think that they obviously needed work. That's what kept them out of the postseason a year ago. And this is a team, remember, who, had they won their final game of the season last year, they were in the postseason. Instead, Aaron Nola laid an egg a little bit. The Tampa Bay Rays, who were a really good team, beat them, and they didn't make it. I think that the bullpen, I mean, we all saw the bullpen last year. We experienced that horror. I mean, it had to be at least 10, 12 games that the bullpen blew for them late. They finished something like 7 games behind Atlanta for first place. I mean, just with an average bullpen, they didn't have to have the best bullpen in the game last year, Rich. Mm-hmm. An average bullpen, and this was a playoff team. An average bullpen, and this was a team that was fighting for the division crown. So I'm excited about the additions they made. Veterans like Brandon Kinsler they brought in, Hector Rondon, Tony Watson. Those are non-roster invites, and I have a feeling they have a great chance of making the roster. Jose Alvarado, Archie Bradley are already on the roster. So, Hector Neris is back, and I've always been a Hector Neris fan. And I think if he's not expected to be the closer, I think he can be a really nice late-inning force as a right-handed setup man, maybe for Bradley. Jojo Romero looked really good last year as a left-hander, and he may get some starts this year. So it'll be, I'm really high on their pitching. Not, sky high. I don't think this is the Dodgers pitching rotation, certainly, but this is a contending rotation now and a contending pitching staff. And frankly, I'll be very surprised if this is not, given health, of course, I'll be very surprised if this is not a postseason team this year.
Awesome. That sounds great. And I'd like to see, Rhys Hoskins have a great season as well. I think we saw him falter a little bit last year. And really, when we look back at it, with the COVID situation the way it was, you could use that as an excuse. But I think you put your finger right on the pulse of the Phillies' greatest weakness last year was the bullpen and the games that they lost. And, as you pointed out just a second ago, they didn't do too badly for being a team that could have done better, so to speak, with that bullpen for sure. So
yeah, I think you have a good chance of seeing a lot. I think some people are going to be surprised with Rhys Hoskins this year, and I say that to me, the Hoskins just did not have as bad a season as people think last year. He only hit 245, but let's face it, that's what Rhys Hoskins is going to hit. He is a career 239 average hitter in the big leagues. His rookie year, he hit 259, and everybody thought he was really, had a really strong rookie year, which he did. He had 18 home runs in something like a third of a season. But he's a slugging first baseman, Hoskins. If he hits 250, 260, you've got a good year out of Hoskins. But what's more important to me is last year in what was, he missed a bunch of games because of injury late. So he had basically a quarter of a season, and he hit 10 home runs with 26 RBIs. So Hoskins was certainly on, give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. He's not going to play 162 games. Hoskins is, to me, a 35 home run guy, first base, easy. He hit 34 in 2018. 29 in 2019 when he had a real down year, hitting just 226. So his on-base percentage is always high. So he's going to draw his walks. And to me, I'll be very surprised if Hoskins isn't healthy, if he doesn't produce 35 homers and 90-plus RBIs, which is fine for me, for my first baseman. When you put him in a lineup with, the likes of Harper and Real Muto and Gregorius. So Hoskins, I think, is going to surprise a bunch of people this year.
Yeah, he's about the same age as Harper. I think he might be a year younger than him, somewhere around there. But, what I initially saw from Hoskins when he first came up with the Phillies was his spectacular plate presence. And he just couldn't get it together last year for whatever reason. His timing was off maybe. But he used, his lasting memory from me anyway of seeing him at the stadium was how he was so selective with hitting certain pitches. And then maybe he's went away from that possibly last season, just getting the 10 home runs. Of course, it was a shortened season as well. So it'll be interesting to see if Hoskins has you want to call it a bounce back year? I don't know. Maybe I'm putting too much up on Hoskins, but certainly think he could contribute more to a 2021 Phillies team. And
remember what you said, 10 home runs, just 10 home runs. Mm-hmm. But like you said, it was a shortened season. It was a shortened season for everybody. 10 home runs last year was nothing to sneeze at. Right. Like I said, that over the course of a full season, 162 games, is almost a 40 home run pace. He raised his average 19 points last year. He raised his on-base percentage 20 points, raised his slugging percentage almost 50 points last year. So I think Hoskins was, he's going to strike out. He's going to walk. I mean, those are big parts of his game, but he's a slugging first baseman who gets on base. He's a home run hitting walks machine. So I wasn't really overly disappointed with him last year. And I think if we alter our perception, I don't know if anybody here in Philadelphia thinks he will be, but he's not going to be a 45 home run MVP type player like Ryan Howard was. He's also not going to be, he's not going to be a weak link in the Phillies lineup. He's going to strike out. He's going to get walks. He's going to hit home runs. So I think if we alter our perception of Hoskins, he may not be an all-star. He doesn't have to be, though, in this lineup. As long as he is pulling his weight, as long as he is getting his 35 homers, hitting that 250 mark, drawing his walks, scoring runs. He was on a pace last year to score over 100 runs. So if he's doing those things, we can't complain about him at first base. Now, defensively is a whole other story. He's not really to say that he's not a great defensive first baseman is an understatement. He's not good. He's not a good first baseman. But I think we're going to have to deal with that for at least one more year. It doesn't look like we're going to have the National League with a designated hitter in 2021, at least not at this point. That's still up for grabs, though. The league could still change that in their negotiations with the Players Association at any point over the next month. So that'll certainly, I think, come in the universal DH after this season when we have a new collective bargaining agreement in place. So this is probably the last year that Hoskins has to play a defensive position on a regular basis. After that, he probably slots in a lot better as a DH occasional first baseman. But he's still young enough. He'll be 28 this year. He's still young enough athletically to be passable at first. So I think we're going to be surprised by him this year.
Very cool. And something that the baseball world was surprised at in the last couple of days is Fernando Tatis Jr. with the huge $340 million 14-year contract out in San Diego. And that just sort of came out of nowhere, this huge signing. I thought I was reading something out of science fiction when I first read it a couple days ago.
Well, that's where we're going with these young franchise cornerstone, perceived as long-term superstar type deals. Rich, you saw what happened with Bryce here, and Mike Trout, Mookie Betts over the last couple of years, and that's pretty much the way that Fernando Tatis Jr. is viewed universally across the baseball world. So, if it works out, the Padres have a franchise icon for over a decade, for most of his career. So the Padres have been that kind of, those of us who are real baseball fans, we know they're that kind of franchise who needed this kind of thing. They made that commitment to Manny Machado a couple of years ago. Now to Tatis, they've made some tremendous additions this offseason to bolster their overall roster, especially in their starting pitching. So I think they're going to be battling the Dodgers. I think they would need some breaks to actually win the division from the Dodgers, but they look like a playoff team right now, pretty easily. And good for Tatis, hopefully good for the Padres if it works out in the long term. And a guy that it really speaks to for me is a guy like Ronald Acuna Jr. in Atlanta. I mean, the Braves got Acuna for a 10-year deal that was really, I believe it's a 10-year deal. It was really team friendly, to say the least. When you look at all these other contracts that guys are signing for 10 years, 12 years at $250, $300 million, and the Braves were able to sign Acuna to the kind of deal that they did. I'm looking him up right now as we're speaking. He has he's getting $17 million. It's a 8-year, $100 million deal. Now it's nothing to sneeze at, but I think that, I don't know who Acuna's agent is, but if I were Acuna right now, I'd be saying, yo, what are these other guys are doing? I'm 23 years old. Acuna could probably right now in the open market get 12 years and $200 million, and he's getting 8 years at $100 million. That's a real bargain for the Braves, and if it stays that way, it's going to allow them to do a lot of things going forward that other teams may not be able to do.
That's for sure. And getting back to our, predictions of doing well for the Phillies this year, the site Fangraphs.com runs its plethora of season stats, so to speak, with predictions and things, but they're not too big on the Phillies making the playoffs. They're only at 12.6% chance, believe it or not. Now, I don't know how they'll figure this out. Maybe going on last year's performances as well. But, 12.6% coming out of Fangraphs for the Phillies to make the playoffs in 2021.
Rich, I that's all fun, stuff, but I don't pay Fangraphs, Zips predictions. I don't pay them a lot of mind. This was last year. They predicted the Red Sox to be a 94-win team, being second place right up the Yankees' butt, battling for the division crown. And the Red Sox were a last place team that played 400 ball. Last year, they had the Houston Astros as a runaway, Western Division winner as a 97-win ball club, and the Astros ended up below 500, barely making the postseason. They had the Nationals as a 93-win ball club last year. Nationals came in last place playing 433 ball. So, and these are, projections, I don't know, they based them, I guess, on certain averages. There's probably some scientific formula, but there's no scientific formula that can predict. There is none. There are just too many variables when you talk about human beings, performances that are up and down from year to year, injuries, in-season signings and trades. So, some preseason prediction just doesn't hold any weight for me. I don't worry about that at all. It gets articles written at this time of year. It gives you maybe it gives you an idea of who the favorites are going in, but I'm not overly concerned about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and they picked the Phillies to have an 80-82 season, which I think the Phillies are going to have a better season. I'm always on the positive side when I can be, and I agree with a lot of things you were saying with this Phillies offense, the improved bullpen. Thank goodness we got new ownership here in Philadelphia that recognized these areas and took a good corrective action towards it. Speaking of new ownership, we have new ownership in New York, so they're projected to do really well this year, and going to be a little more of that rivalry between the Phillies and the Mets this year.
Yeah, and just for me with the Mets, it's always I'll believe it when I see it. Even the moves that they've made, the guys that they've brought in. Now, DeGrom is, if not the best, certainly one of the best pitchers in all of baseball. So, not talking about him necessarily, but they're still not going to have Syndergaard for at least the first half of the season. And the other guys, they're nice little arms, but I think Stroman is up and down in his career. Carrasco is getting a little bit longer in the tooth, hasn't pitched a full season in a few years. After that, they're just a bunch of guys on their ball club and in their pitching rotation, in their on their pitching staff. James McCann, they signed him instead of going after Realmuto as a catcher, and he's decent. He's not a great catcher. Alonso has power. Jeff McNeil is a nice player, and Lindor is a fantastic pickup for them at shortstop. Their outfield doesn't really scare me a lot. I don't know. I like Conforto, but aside from that, I see the Mets as being, this is a team that no matter who they sign, no matter who they've developed, and they have had other big signings over the years and decades. They've had other big internal players develop. And what happens? They always underachieve. There's something dysfunctional about the New York Mets. There's a reason that it's been 35 years since they won a World Series. So I'm kind of an anti-Mets guy as it is, but I'm also there's a lot of talk. I mean, you hear a lot of talk every year about the Mets, or at least most years from their fan base, and then they fall on their face. So to me, it's like you talk, do all the talking you want, but I'm going to show me point with the Mets. They've had multiple changes in ownership over the last 35, 36 years since winning that last World Series, and they haven't got it done. So to me, it doesn't matter who the owner is. It doesn't matter what star you bring in. You got to do it on the field. And this is a traditionally dysfunctional team, and I'm going to still believe it will be. Once again, I see holes in that roster. I see pieces that I think are a little overrated. And I still think that right now the Braves are the team to beat in our division. And I think that the Phillies, by the time it's all over, are going to be a bigger threat to the Braves than the Mets will be.
Very good. So you heard it here first on Phillies Talk Podcast from Matt Veazey there. Tune into the podcast all year long. We're just getting started up here for the 21 season. We gave you guys a break for December and January. Went by so quick, hardly knew it went past, but check it out over at fightingphillies.com. That's the home for the Phillies Talk Podcast. And Matt, you've sort of moved around philliesbell.com.
Yeah, I'm no longer running that website. I have my own website that I've been writing on a lot more than baseball at since 2004. So I'm just going back to that. That's mattveasey.com. So if anybody's interested in that, it's MattVeasey, mattveasey.com. And I write on a lot more than baseball and the Phillies, although you will find a lot of baseball and the Phillies there. In fact, probably out of the last 7 or 8 articles I've written, half a dozen of them have been about baseball and the Phillies in particular. The most recent piece that I wrote this past week as spring training opened was on the Phillies situations at what I think are the 2 most interesting and critical to me positions going into spring training and into the season, which are second base and center field. I wrote on how I believe that the club should go with Scott Kingery at second and Adam Hazley in center field, and why I believe that. So if anybody's interested, they can stop by the website, check out that article, and stay tuned for plenty more Phillies baseball pieces going forward. They can also find me, Rich, posting pretty much every day at Phillies Bell on Twitter. I try to bring lots of historical reference and historical update pieces of interest during each day, and any articles that I write in relation to the Phillies get posted on Phillies Bell. And I also share a lot of the best articles that I find from around the web on the team at that site, as well as throwing in a few of the most important Major League Baseball articles that I find. So at Phillies Bell on Twitter is a great place to, for Phillies fans to really stop by every day to visit.
Very cool. And of course, check out the Facebook site for Fightin' Phillies blog. You can sign up there. And we're going to be streaming some live shows as well on the YouTube page for Phillies Talk Podcast. So just go to youtube.com and then search for Phillies Talk Podcast. You see Rich Baxter and Matt Veasey there. You know you're at the right place to listen to some great Phillies content all year long. Well, Matt, it's been a quick first show here to get us back into spring training for 2021, but I'm optimistic. Can't wait for the first games to start up down there in Clearwater, Florida and surrounding areas, and bullish on the Phillies. Buy the Phillies.
A new season is beginning, Rich, so you know what they say, the old saying, hope springs eternal, right?
Yes, it does. Thanks for listening, everyone. We'll talk to you on the next edition of Phillies Talk Podcast.
Take care. Go Phillies.